So welcome everyone to all who just joined us for this new Virtual Innovation Center. As a very quick way of introduction, my name is Aline. I'm from One Nucleus, and I am hosting these sessions in the context of the Virtual Innovation Center that One Nucleus developed a few months ago. So briefly, context is to really support companies in their growing phases. So whether they're becoming more active deal maker, they're looking at the next strategic development phase, or very importantly, looking at operational development. And growth and operational development often means finding new lab facility or growing lab facility, and obviously recruiting the related staff to that. So I'm really happy today to have this great workshop with lots of insights on what to consider when growing a lab facility, from the lab space to the facility itself, but then also to the whole equipment and consumable side of it, and also including managing better workflows and the lab of the future and how to bring in more intelligence into that. So when we run these sessions, we run them in collaboration with our partners, and I'm delighted today to have such a great team from Thermo Fisher, corporate sponsor of One Nucleus, will give you such great insight. We want this session to be as interactive as possible, so there will be some questions on the way for you to answer, just for them to understand a bit better what are your needs, but also you will be able to ask them questions directly within this workshop, and I will encourage you to prompt them in the chat box anytime, and I will pass them to the presenter, or if you want to follow up with them later, that's absolutely fine too. I am sure they will be happy to share their details. So without further ado, I am leaving the floor to Ashley Box, who will give you an introduction of Thermo Fisher, and then we'll introduce his colleagues to run through the workshop. Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Aileen. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the lovely introduction there, and for Aileen giving us the overview of the session that we've got planned for you today. So welcome to this One Nucleus Virtual Innovation Centre workshop on growing lab capacity. It's great to see some familiar names in the chat box there, but also some new ones too. For those of you not familiar with me, my name's Ashley Box, and I'm part of Thermo Fisher Scientific's global corporate biotech team. I have specific responsibilities supporting our UK biotech customers and the supporting ecosystem. My role in business development is really to represent the entire portfolio of capabilities across our organisation. So I serve as incremental or additive to the local representatives that you're probably already familiar with. So I support across the segment to help deliver our company value proposition. And essentially, I can provide a single point of contact should you need it to help customers access our portfolio and coordinate support from across the company. Sorry, just waiting for the screen to move on to the. Sorry, I've got on one too many there, too many clicks, getting carried away. So hopefully many of you will know Thermo Fisher in some capacity, but I'd like to start today with a brief introduction to the company. So this slide, I hope, gives you a sense of the scope of our company. Our mission, and one we're incredibly proud of, is to enable our customers to make the world a healthier, cleaner and safer place. And this is similar to and aligns very well with the missions and visions of many of our biotech and pharmaceutical customers who are striving to improve health outcomes also. So essentially, we're all working towards the same objectives. As you can see from the 4 blocks across the lower part of the screen there, collectively, we're about 80,000 employees, all committed to serving science and technology. We employ over 5,700 scientists and R&D engineers, and we turned over we invested approximately over 1 billion in R&D last year. And that was to help develop and innovate new technologies, bring new products and services to support the life sciences and healthcare. We add value by helping our customers accelerate innovation and enhance productivity underpinned by quality. With revenue exceeding 30 billion in 2020, we're a large organisation. That is not meant to be bragging rights. It's really to reassure you that as a large organisation with a solid foundation, I hope provides you with the confidence that we're here for the long term. If your project's important to you, it's important to us too. And you need to know that you're entrusting it with a partner that's financially stable and able to deliver on its commitments. So I often, oh, here we go again. It seems to move on 2 slides when I click one. So I often say that everyone knows Thermo Fisher Scientific for something, but very few people know us for everything. So this is how we come to market as one company, utilizing the 6 premier brands shown across the screen. We've built a deep portfolio of leading brands that are all devoted to serving science. So starting on the left, we have Thermo Scientific, which is our brand associated with instruments, equipment, software, services, and consumables, which all help to empower scientists to solve complex analytical challenges. Next to that is Applied Biosystems, which is a brand which encompasses integrated systems for genetic analysis, which have been built to take on every genetic sciences questions, whether that's PCR, genetic sequencing platforms, next generation sequencing, etc. You then have Infantry, well-known brand, products and services, critical tools enabling life science researchers in cell biology, molecular biology, protein and cell analysis, sample preparation, and areas like that. The next brand is Fisher Scientific, which again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's our premier laboratory distribution channel, providing choice and convenience to thousands and access to thousands of suppliers and millions of products worldwide. So essentially a one-stop shop experience with their industry-leading scale and depth. They also provide tailored logistics solutions, state-of-the-art inventory management strategies, and can help our customers work more efficiently. You also then have Unity Lab Services, which really takes care of everything post-sales servicing, asset and inventory management, and outsourcing of non-core laboratory management functions. And finally, we have Patheon, which provides end-to-end pharma service solutions for every drug development journey, providing industry-leading CDMO services as well as clinical trial solutions. So with more than 55 locations around the world, they provide an end-to-end drug development offering from API, biologics, plasmids, viral vectors, early and late phase development, clinical trial solutions, logistics services, and commercial manufacturing. So a lot of products and services there, as you can see from across the 6 brands. So when you put all those brands and products together, this is one way how we display our end-to-end capabilities onto one slide. And I apologize, it's a very busy slide and it's really difficult to do it justice with over 1 million products and services available from Thermo Fisher across what we like to call our molecule to medicine journey. So on the left of the illustration, you see their discovery research. And here you'll find many of the products that we manufacture being utilized in the early stages of molecule identification and detection. Once that molecule's been discovered, it really then starts its process on its journey, and development and optimization really is the next stage. And then we provide all the tools, the analytical development and QC, whether it's bioreactors, also fermenters, single buffers, single-use technologies to help you scale that molecule to the next level and take it through its journey from preclinical onto the various phases of clinical trials and production. Also, formulation, analytical process development services are provided from clinical right through to commercial manufacturing, along with clinical labeling, packing, and transport to the clinics. So this capability that you see there on the slide from end to end this workflow is unique and presents customers the opportunity to work with us either in individual areas or to complement their existing processes, or to collaborate across the entire pathway, providing a fully integrated service offering or one-stop shop from our customers from R&D right through to commercial production. So that was a brief introduction to the company, but moving on and your involvement today, based on our previous discussions with One Nucleus and what we've heard and learned today about the Virtual Innovation Centre, we believe most of you can be described as falling into one of the following areas. So you're either preparing for scaling up your lab now or in the near future. Most of your team members are scientists and have a lean or no dedicated operational team. You may be in a process of further fundraising and want to ensure investors that you have a concrete R&D scale-up plan in place. So at the top of this slide, you'll see several interesting statistics about the global biotech lab market and its trends. It's clear that this is and will continue to be a high growth market We see in the press regularly all the investments and the growth going on in this area. And we hope by working collaboratively together, we can share our experiences, knowledge and capabilities, which we hope will assist you with your plans. I'd like to quickly go to our first poll of the day, please. Aileen mentioned it sort of being an interactive session. So if we can go to our first question, please, and ask you just to answer the poll that's coming up on the screen now, I hope. And there we go. So the question is, do you have a timeline to move out of an incubator and set up your lab? And if you're not in an incubator today, it may be to just set up and expand, your current facility or move into another facility. We can sort of just take 10 seconds to answer those questions. So question 1, yes, in less than 6 months. 2, yes, in less than a year. 3, yes, in more than a year. 4, no, I've already moved out. And 5, no, I'm still figuring that out. Excellent. So some very interesting questions there. Thank you. Very interesting answers, I have to say. Thank you very much for doing that. I'll just give it 3, 2, 1. I think that's probably everybody for now. Okay, thank you. So, we've not created and operated a startup, but we've worked obviously with many over the years, and we've witnessed best practices in operating an R&D company and many of the pitfalls that you want to avoid. So we hope today's workshop will guide you through some of the essential questions that you'd have to answer before you design your own lab. We hope going through this experience will mature your thinking in how to scale your capacity with support for budgeting for the next chapter in your startup journey. So what needs to be considered in a new lab? Well, clearly there's a lot to think about when starting up a new lab, not only to design, build and operate the lab, but also to prepare for future scale up and ensure that early decisions support that path. Startup could be several things, from the first part of your early discovery and research. This could mean startup of the company itself or of a new project as you grow your business. In either case, a standardized approach facilitates the design and outfitting of the labs with the proper technologies to enable workflows, including instruments and equipment, consumables, software and services. We know that you're going to be faced with key make or buy decisions about whether to do certain activities in-house or to outsource these services. We'll also explore this in greater detail in designing and building the lab as illustrated on the first block there on the left. Once the company or project is up and running, focus must shift to operational alignment and efficiency to help achieve the objectives in a timely and cost-effective way. Leveraging the scale of comprehensive workflow solutions and the advantages of e-procurement systems and inventory management will be our second session there. And finally, our third session will look at digital technologies like AI, data science, cloud networking, lab automation, and how to make all of this possible. We'll ensure we leave adequate time for questions after each presentation, so please do get your questions ready. So with that, I'd now like to hand over to Philippa Swindon to lead you through the first part of designing and building the laboratory. Over to you, Philippa.
Yes, many thanks, Ashley. So thanks, everyone. I'm Philippa Swindon. I'm the Senior District Manager for the UK Biotechs and Pharma. And first of all, I'd just like to do a quick poll to find out a little bit more about the audience. So Jenny, would you be so kind as to start the poll? So what capabilities will you need to add or scale up soon? So select as many that apply to you all, and we'll review at the end. Okay, so high throughput screening, bit of everything. Okay, adding more analytical capabilities, scaling. So hopefully we're going to cover a bit of each of those throughout the presentation. So that's good to see. So thank you everyone for those results. Okay. I'm having the problem now when the slides aren't moving on. Okay. Oh, there you go. The same problem as Ashley. Right. Okay. So, so choosing what to buy for your lab can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming. There's so much choice on the market. So in no particular order of importance, we've put together a few that we feel are important and that we feel are key to consider just to get you off on the right foot. So the first one, sustainability and looking after the environment, is a topic we get asked a lot about. More and more customers now have your own internal key performance goals on monitoring what you need to be doing internally to try and reduce your carbon footprint or reduce the amount of plastic you're generating. So what we thought was, when it comes to looking for equipment that you would need for your lab, is to always look for those low energy efficiency ratings. And when it comes to consumables, really look for products that have minimal waste in the packaging. Thermo, for instance, they've actually labelled all our environmentally friendly products on our website with this green leaf icon that you see on the screen. And other suppliers may have done the same thing just to help guide your choices. Some suppliers have also gone so far as to look at how their products are shipped into the market in an attempt to move away from those EPS coolers. And also try to ship as much as possible ambiently, just to avoid shipping anything on dry ice. So sustainability is now considered by a lot of the large manufacturers when they're considering their best-selling products. So for instance, what Thermo have done is we've looked at our basal media solutions, and we now offer bench stable solutions. So if space is at a premium in your -20s, then you could look at maybe a bench stable option, which will obviously alleviate some of that space. So while we're on the subject of storage, in order to future-proof yourself, you may like to also consider what the sample volume size you're likely to be working with. This will obviously give you an indication of really how many -20s you may need to accommodate in your lab. If budget is lean in the early days, then consider looking at equipment that is modular. Depending on the lab's application, most equipment nowadays can be bought in stages so that you don't have all that initial outlay up front. And if space really is at a premium, consider prioritizing a footprint when making your decisions. For example, when it comes to PCR machines, many nowadays you can just buy the base unit and have interchangeable blocks. That will obviously mean that you're not buying lots of different individual units and having to daisy chain them together, which will obviously take up a lot more space. So one thing you also want to do is, when you move into a new space, is consider getting a site survey done so that you understand the bench height, where your power and LAN connection points are, what the accessibility is like into that space through lifts, stairs and doorways, for instance. And fourth bullet point, online security. It's something that we hear a lot about these days in our personal lives, but in the lab is no different. So if you are going to be moving into a shared space, consider the actual security of that equipment. If it is going to be communal, you might want to protect a particular protocol, prevent it from getting overridden or deleted completely. So where appropriate, most equipment should have this capability, but it's always worth asking the supplier that you're looking for if they do have the capability to obviously protect your protocols and the equipment. When it comes to consumables, innovation really is the key, and the products that you choose should obviously help you fix, accomplish or avoid something. So this is why we see so many of our customers really take the time to thoroughly evaluate a particular product before they go ahead and proceed. One question we tend to get asked a lot from biotechs is, how quickly will the product get me to my end goal? And is there a particular step that your product will help speed me up or make the whole step redundant completely? So if time is of the essence, then there are options available. Some might be slightly more costly than others, but definitely worth weighing up to see if it obviously will benefit you to your ultimate objective. You may also, just on the final point there, you may have researchers join your team that it's their first lab job, or it's the first time that they're dealing with a particular technology or brand of instrumentation in your lab. So whatever your team's experience, the technology you choose will always work best if it's intuitive and caters for anyone with any depth of experience. So to facilitate this, you might like to consider a sole supply for your instrumentation needs, one that may use the same interface or software across their platforms. So let's move now to looking at what is some of the typical equipment and design layout of labs. So here on this slide, you'll see everything from consumables right through to small benchtop equipment and larger capital equipment that you'll typically need in the lab. Please allow us to help you with any specifications here that you might need. We're available to ask for if you have any advice that you need. This is just a small snapshot of what we have available. So hopefully some of this looks vaguely familiar to some of you on the call today. We also have a dedicated labs construction support team that have access to this great 3D tool that helps you map out your lab, what the dimensions are in your lab, what equipment you're looking to put into your lab, just to help alleviate that transition into your own space. So this slide gives you a few just snapshot illustrations of what you can expect to see from the tool, but we're happy to work with you if you're moving into a new space and really just need to be able to visualize what that space is going to do for you and how to get the most from it. So now we've looked at what factors should be considered when making purchases. How do you choose from all the suppliers out there? I mean, naturally, you might want to choose a supplier that you've gone with in the past, that you've had a good experience with, and you feel familiar with. However, there are some other considerations you might like to bear in mind. So there are suppliers out there that do offer new and used equipment. So if budgets are tight, you might like to consider what we call ex-demo or refurbished equipment. Should you go this route though, you may need to be a little bit more flexible with your expectations. Perhaps the exact specification you require might not be available, or you're looking at last year's model rather than the latest evolved model that has just been launched. Also, if you go this route with ex-demo or refurbished, consider the full cost of ownership. You know, the initial outlay of the instrument may be less than of a new instrument, but to maintain over the years, any service costs may override any savings that you make at the beginning. So there could be an element of obviously compromise if you go this route, and you might like to consider what your priority is. Is it price or is it having the latest technology? So if you're really not sure on what you need and find the amount of choice a little bit daunting, sometimes to ask for a demo is the best route to go. Be prepared to answer a few questions from the supplier on this. They just need to make sure that they get the exact model to meet your needs and understand perfectly what it is you're trying to achieve. Also, please do bear in mind that sometimes a demo unit may not be immediately available. So the sooner you can anticipate needing to go this route, the more likely the supplier will be able to meet your needs. So the fourth point, financing options. So does your supplier of choice offer flexible financing options that cater to your timelines and budget? You may be in urgent need of a capital piece of equipment, but don't have the initial funds ready to go. So looking at leasing equipment might be a viable solution. You could be in a situation where also you've chosen your ideal piece of equipment, but then 18 months time, a new version is launched or your needs change. So having a supplier that can move nimbly with your goals and the moving goalposts and provide trade-ins or trade-ups is worth considering prior to investing in that large piece of equipment. One point you may like to negotiate up front when investing in equipment is the service packaging you'll need. So some suppliers may do package deals where you have one price for the instrument, the servicing, and the initial reagent costs you'll need to get you up and running. So this will help to keep things simple and mean that you can start using your equipment in confidence from day one. And finally, when it comes to running costs of the lab, reagents and general consumables are certainly worth getting right from the beginning, just to minimize downtime of testing reagents further down the line. So we do offer at Thermo Fisher a couple of new lab startup options and schemes to help you get up and running. And these are either discount models or special voucher schemes that I'll talk a little bit more on a future slide. And that slide is right here now, hopefully on your screen. So on the left, you'll see the Thermo Fisher scheme. This is called Jumpstart. This is specifically for new lab startups, and it covers the wide range of life science research consumables. And on the right-hand side, you've got the Fisher Scientific New Lab Startup Scheme. So Fisher Scientific being the distribution side of the company. And their scheme differs slightly to the discount model from Jumpstart. Fisher Scientific offer a voucher scheme, which basically means when you pass certain spend thresholds, you get sent vouchers for Fisher brand products. There's also a nice checklist on the Fisher website as well for new lab equipment that's a little bit more detailed than my previous slide, which some of you might find useful. Okay, so let's start now and do a deeper dive into instrument servicing and maintenance. And again, we put some considerations on the screen here that you'll see. So the first bullet is really all about opting for a company that can offer extended warranties and a variety of service and maintenance plans. So we're flexible and able to adapt for whatever you need and your instrumentation needs are. The second bullet is really about you having the reassurance by choosing a supplier that has a large service network that can be nimble and respond quickly should your instrument need urgent attention. For instance, Thermo Fisher has more than 1,000 manufacturer trained and certified professionals out there ready to assist you when and if you need them. So third bullet point there, just always important to clarify your chosen service provider will repair your instrument with original manufactured spare parts, and also has the ability to diagnose a resolution remotely, just in case you have a problem that needs the most urgent attention. If you do need to send your instrument away for service, always worth asking your service provider, maybe up front, if they will send you a loan instrument, again, just to minimize the downtime in your pipeline. So fourth point there, just to having an idea on the breadth of the local technical support coverage, it could be an indication of the response times, again, should you need an urgent solution to a critical problem. All of these points are really just to help you think about how do you minimize that downtime if your instrument needs to be repaired. So finally here, choosing a supplier as well that is reputable and well known for their after-sales support. One who has a team that offers instrument installation where required face-to-face if you need it when you're up and running. And also maybe a provider that offers support to come and train you on your new piece of equipment, so that then you have a dedicated person who's trained on that piece of equipment and then can go on to train other members of your team. After you've invested in your instrumentation, you may like to think about sort of user groups, or you may like to hear from other people around the globe that have invested in the same equipment as you to share ideas. At Thermo, we have special user group meetings where we try and connect people together so they can share ideas and talk about what they're using the instrumentation for, to really fertilize those ideas. And yes, and we like to be able to facilitate that for you. So in summary then, when it comes to instrumentation service and post-sale support, Thermo Fisher do provide a complete portfolio of services and support solutions that are really just designed to increase your productivity, reduce total cost of ownership, and ensure that performance throughout your laboratory maintains at a good level. So some take-home messages would be that if your instrumentation is going to be running 24/7, a deeper level of service may be required. And you may also like to consider preventative maintenance as well. If budget is lean, maybe just consider those pieces of instrumentation in your lab that are going to be used more thoroughly and carry more burden than the others. You may like to just have a different level of service on those than have a blanket level of service for every single piece of equipment in your laboratory. For those instruments that are taking a high burden, that are used 24/7, you may like to have them regularly calibrated as preventative maintenance. This will just obviously ensure that they're always running over, and again, there's no downtime in a critical pipeline for you. So as I said in an earlier slide, choose a supplier that can offer warranty service at the point of instrumentation purchase. It's usually more economical that way. Most suppliers will have various plans for you to peruse. So again, take their time and opt for one that's right for you, the current needs of your lab and the foreseeable needs of your lab. And like I've said before as well, choose a supplier that has genuine manufactured spare parts. That will ensure that when you send your instrumentation away for service, you always have that reassurance that you're going to receive it back in the same condition as the day one that you purchased it. Okay, so thank you. That's me. Are there any questions from the audience? Deathly silence. I don't bite.
No. Thank you, Philip. No, that's fine. I actually have one that may warm up for others. So how can we ensure delivery of critical stock for development or manufacturing is not disrupted?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, just to some of the biotechs, well, all of the biotechs, in fact, will have critical pipelines. You're trying to do something with a time frame, and we as suppliers always want to be able to supply you as soon as we possibly can with the goods that you need. So what we would urge our customers, if there are products that are critical to your pipeline, is to either set them up on reserve with us. So that means that you tell us how much you use of that particular item on a monthly basis, and we reserve that stock for you. Or you could look at things like standing orders, so you get a certain amount of stock delivered at the same time every month as well. So you just have some reassurances there. Those are the two key things we would recommend. Eileen, thank you for the question. Okay.
So that's really good service. Can I have maybe just a quick one before we move on? So this was more well, security and making sure you store the critical equipment and supply. But the other question I had prompted it was, how can we ensure our business is scalable? So I guess it's having some pointers of what a smaller company needs to be mindful of to make sure they are future-proofed and scalable for us in future.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we touched upon it in one of my slides there, but it's just to bear in mind that when you have the budget and you're ready to purchase a piece of equipment, is to really think about, is that piece of equipment going to see you through for 2-3 years time in future, and to really look at, you know, the piece of equipment that you have, is it scalable? Is it modular? Are there things that you can add to it, or can you adapt to it and bolt other parts on as time or more money becomes available? So some platforms, for instance, will allow you to adopt higher throughput versions when they become available. So I think it is really trying to think about what you're likely to need in the future as well. I know that's not always feasible, but certainly when it comes to choosing equipment, do ask the supplier, you know, is this piece of equipment that I'm looking to purchase going to see me through, you know, if my needs increase, if my sample volume changes, if my throughput increases, and just to bear your choices in mind, depending on what answers that supplier gives.
Thanks. So no false economies of trying to do something simple, but maybe that will be obsolete in the future.
Exactly. I mean, it can cost more money and time down the line if you do try to save money or cut corners early on and buy something that's maybe a great price, but it only does what you need right here and now. Because then if you do actually in a situation where you do need to scale up in 18 months, 2 years time, that piece of equipment may then become redundant completely and you need to shift to a different technology. So it's always worth asking the question. Sometimes it may not be available, but absolutely, it's totally valid to ask the question up front. That's great. Any other questions, or am I at time? I'm probably at time now, aren't I? So what I'll do now is I'll move to my colleague Chetna. Chetna, are you there?
Yes. Thanks, Philippa. Hello, I'm Chetna Revankar, Senior. Jenny, okay. I'll request the control after the poll. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Chetna Revankar, Senior Manager on the Biotech Solution Development Team. Philippa just talked to you about how to scale your laboratory, but we realize that in many cases, emerging biotechs may not be fully staffed or equipped to perform all experiments, and outsourcing research might be another option to consider. In this session, I'll talk about outsourcing, specifically what are the criteria one needs to consider for outsourcing and how to pick a right outsourcing partner. Now let's take a quick poll to understand how many of you have outsourced projects or at least part of the project. Jenny, if we can get the poll up. Let's give it a few more seconds. That is awesome. So it looks like most of you have either outsourced projects or thought about outsourcing. So basically, it looks like you guys have experience of outsourcing, so we don't need to touch on outsourcing. Just kidding. Thanks, Jenny. So yeah, as I was saying, with outsourcing, I mean, of course, majority of you have the outsourcing experience, but at the same time, when it comes to outsourcing, the criteria that one needs to consider along the various phases of drug discovery continuum are very different. So you may have outsourcing experience in certain phase or phases of the drug discovery continuum, but the requirements for other phases are very different, and it is important to have that know-how, right? So again, before we get into the criteria or considerations for outsourcing, it is assumed that you have a project that you're working on, or at least have a project concept in mind. There we go. Ooh. So yeah, when one looks into the various criteria for outsourcing, if I can get your attention on the left-hand side of this table, we have listed here a few features that one needs to consider when it comes to outsourcing. Let's start with an example. Say you're looking to generate a stable cell line that is overexpressing a target of interest, and you want it to be functionally validated. This is the scope of the project, basically generating the cell line and validating its functionality. Some of the providers in this instance can just take it on as a single project with one milestone. And some providers would break it down into, say, 2 milestones. One would be to Actually, one would be to generate the stable cell line as such, and the other one would be functional validation. So in case if they are able to generate the stable cell line, but are not able to validate, you won't get charged for both the milestones, right? That way, it will save you in terms of cost as such. Next, you want to consider if you have the necessary expertise and resources, such as equipment and know-how to execute this work in-house. Going back to the example of generating a stable cell line, if you're thinking of using electroporation or transfection, do you say you want to ask, do you have a neon in-house or an electroporation instrument in-house, or know-how of using the right transfection reagents? For further validation of expression, do you have a qPCR machine or a flow cytometer that you can use for validation of expression? Next, you must consider human resources. Do you have enough people with the desired experience to execute on this project? And if you're operating in later stages of drug discovery, the development and manufacturing phase, you have to think about the regulatory aware of these requirements upfront, so you can have all the requirements addressed when you get to that stage. Capital investment is another big consideration. In the example of generating a functionally validated stable cell line that I talked to you about earlier, if you need to generate a clonal cell line to get to the stable cell line generation, you need access to a cell sorter. Or for functional validation, if you need to use a flipper system, these are all CapEx instruments. So you need to plan for it upfront, and it requires large investment. And then depending on nature of the project, some of the other considerations to think about are the need for supply chain forecasting and project management resources. Some of the providers offer these services as part of the service, or these can be offered as add-on services. So to summarize, if there is a service provider who offers the service you are looking for, have necessary expertise and resources, you may want to consider outsourcing at this point. Additionally, when your project progresses to later stages of drug discovery, if you're looking for accurate supply chain forecasting or project management support, it may be better to work with an outsourcing partner. So once you are thinking of outsourcing, what are how do you go about selecting the right partner to work with? Basically outlined here are 3 types of providers categorized based on which phases of drug discovery they operate in, starting with CRO or contract research organization, who mainly operate in the research and discovery phase, followed by CDMO or contract development and manufacturing organizations. As the name suggests, they operate in the later phases of drug development. On the other hand, service offerings of integrated providers, who are also the primary supplier of products, are more comprehensive, and they span across the whole drug discovery continuum, starting from research to commercialization. Now let's look at the features one needs to consider for selecting an outsourcing partner. So if I can again get your attention to the left-hand side of the table here, the key feature to consider is flexibility of the provider. By this, what I mean is the flexibility of the provider to take on projects, and their offerings should match your requirements. The next thing one wants to look at is the tech transfer ability. And this can be both ways. The ability of provider to execute on methods developed by you or that are transferred by you, or if they have developed the technology, they're transferring that technology back to you for continuation in-house if this is one of the requirements. So going back to the example of generating a stable cell line that I talked about earlier, the provider generates it and say functionally validates it. You want to bring it in-house for further work, so that at that point, it is very important for them to provide a detailed protocol and enable transferring that technology to you. Right? Capacity is another key feature one should consider. Do they have enough resources and equipment to execute on your project? Because this can clearly affect the timeline and quality of results. In some instances, some of the providers schedule far out. So they can run 3 or 4 projects in a given year, and you want to make sure that they are ready to get the project going right away, and then there is no lag before they get your project started. The next thing one wants to look at, of course, is the budget. Providers that work on work based on milestones instead of the entire project can be cost effective. Whereas others that charge for the entire project, since there is upfront resource investment needed at their end, they can be expensive. The last feature to consider here is one-stop shop. Essentially the provider who can work with you through all the phases of drug discovery, going from discovery to commercialization. So this is important because when one is working with a single provider, the touch points are far fewer, and at the same time, there are dedicated project managers and other resources to support the project throughout its lifetime. So if you're looking to outsource projects in a particular phase where you don't need to look at the drug discovery continuum, then working with a CRO or integrated provider will be a good option for you. If you are looking to outsource in the development and manufacturing phase, it is better to partner with CDMO or an integrated provider, because these providers have the know-how and the technologies to support you through that phase of drug discovery. Now shown here is an example of a scorecard which wherein you're looking for a one-stop shop. In this instance, integrated provider seems to be the best option if you're looking to work with a single partner throughout the drug discovery continuum. We're moving on slides here. Thank you. So yeah, going back to integrated provider, what I was saying in terms of being one-stop shop, Thermo Fisher, in addition to being a primary provider of products, we also offer custom services to fill in the gap for that you may have in your research work. So we have dedicated PMO or the project management support that will help you to keep projects on track, thereby fast tracking the timelines of the project. Additionally, we also provide expertise that or scientists who have worked to develop these cutting edge technologies. So the scientists working on your custom project work very closely with scientists who have developed these cutting edge technologies thereby, assuring the results at a faster pace and at the same time, good quality of results. And additionally, like I said, having access to the cutting edge technologies and the expertise, it gives you a reassurance that your project will be executed on time and you will get, you can expect quality results there. So essentially, as I said, as I said, we can work with you on the whole drug discovery continuum, or if you would like to work with us at a particular phase of the drug discovery, be it like early discovery and research or development or even commercial production, we can work with you. And additionally, we also can work with you on setting up clinical trials. So basically, Thermo Fisher is your partner of choice if you're looking for one-stop shop or an integrated provider. Next, I'm going to talk to you about a case study which looks into gene therapy workflow, again, starting from the vector construction to the final formulation and supply chain logistics. So we can, again, work with you throughout the whole continuum of this workflow, or we can work with certain stages of this workflow that you would like to work on. So say in case of vector construction, we can do the designing of the construct and synthesis, as well as scale up the plasmid prep. You can then take this in-house and execute rest of the steps, or you can also work with other providers if you have already worked with them or would like to transfer. Otherwise, just working through the continuum with Thermo Fisher is also an option. So if you would like to take the work with us, then we can take the designed construct and generate production or generate the viral prep using our expertise in transfection reagents as well as custom media, and then take it to the next step of vector purification. And we can also help you with characterization of this viral prep and also help manage the supply chain logistics, formulation, and taking this product to the market. So essentially, we can support the end-to-end workflow in this instance and other workflows of your interest. So next time when you think about outsourcing, think Thermo Fisher. I hope I have enabled you to make the right decision for outsourcing your research in terms of which providers to work with. Thank you for that. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Shit. I'll also warm it up with the question I got, which actually is interesting for also One Nucleus perspective as a network. How would you say how important it is to have the outsourcing partner near your facility? So co-localization, physical.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen, for that question. Yeah, sometimes we think that, it is important for the partner to be geographically close, but the short answer to that question is no, it is not really that important because, given the global network, now it is, you would find providers close to your place, but like I said, the short answer there is no, because it all comes down to the skill sets that the partner offers. Right? You want to pick a partner that has the right skill sets and experience in working in that space. to be able to provide quality results in a timely fashion.
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess also in light of the last 18 months, where we've shown we can operate very efficiently remotely. Maybe just a last question before we move on, because I think that's very relevant. Can you just talk briefly about tech transfer from provider to customer? So how does that work? What needs to be considered? And of course, you're very experienced with that. Customers maybe a bit less. So just to give your view and a few tips.
Absolutely, yeah. So especially talking about the technology transfer from the provider to you, the customer, what is important is the type of provider you are working with. Say in case of CROs or CDMOs, they have their workflows. In general, transfer becomes challenging and not everyone is transparent and open to it. But when you work with integrated providers who are also the supplier of the products, it is in their interest to work with you to enable you to make sure that the technology transfer as well as the details that are captured for the products to use, how to use, and the support that you get is really, really good. So, that is one of the key advantages of working with integrated providers, the transparency and the support that you get for moving the technology in-house when you have the need to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's the experience, a key element here. So good.
With that, again, I would like to thank you for your time and attention. I'll now hand it off to Paul Leach, who will be RE Solutions sales specialist, and he will be talking to you about building operations in the lab.
So I see everyone's still with us. I see the chat's still very cold at the minute, so hopefully we're just getting warmed up ready for the second half. But yeah, certainly any questions, feel free to add much. So yeah, so on to my section, operating the lab. And, yeah, just to recap, my name is Paul Leach. I'm the solution sales specialist for Thermo Fisher Scientific. And it's my role to help our customers utilize and implement our e-business solutions to drive more efficient supply chain solutions. So my aim for today is to talk about what are the operational challenges companies commonly experience and what solutions are out there to help you overcome those issues and concerns you might have. This will consist of considerations as well as inventory management solutions. And we've got another poll for you, so Jen, if you could be so kind and knock that poll up for us. That's question number 4. Which of the business terminology have you heard of before? And again, it's a multiple choice, so feel free to select more than one. And I want to see a 12 out of 12 response, please, so no pressure. Okay, so we're doing well. None of these sound familiar. Excellent. That's what we like to hear. Web shop punch out, okay. That's great. 8 out of 12, 9 out of 12. Are we going to be able to get 12 out of 12? More seconds, if this people drinking their coffee and reading. Okay, no, that's great. So we can see that there's a distinct mix between knowing nothing and knowing a little bit. So certainly thank you for that. It just helps us broaden our education as to what our customers require and indeed what our customers are looking to gain from this as well. So what's important, that as your business grows, it's important to ensure that you have the foundations in place to be able to cater for the increase in demand you'll have on your own internal processes and employees. It's very easy to have a mindset of we've always done it this way. So does that mean things can't be improved for the better? Your most valuable asset as your company grows are your people within the lab. However, do you want the same people who are running the lab to also be responsible the needing to place orders. Balancing resource and responsibilities is a very difficult act. It's about looking to work smarter within your company. That's why it's paramount to understand potential risks within your current processes. For example, what happens if Dave, the lab manager, leaves? Dave is the only person who knows how to process orders. Similarly, how would we cope if Sarah left her finance job? She's the only one that can process invoices. Understanding these pain points helps you understand and identify what processes your company require. So you've decided to explore the world of e-business and how it can benefit your company. And rightly, you've created a scoping document. Whilst this is certainly a worthwhile exercise, you find this soon raises additional challenges you didn't even know existed yet. For example, ease of use. Will your current, and more importantly, will your new employees be able to get up to speed on how your new platform looks and operates? Required resource. We need to hire expensive specialists to help set up integration elements, product database, account setup, training of your end users. Timelines. In many instances, timelines to implement ERPs can take months, if not years. EDI integration projects can take weeks to set up and configure. But what happens if you need a solution now? Future-proofing. How do you ensure that any solution you put in place now will be the same solution you need in 18 months' time? Do you have the flexibility within your setup to be agile as and when your requirements change? So what are the typical options? Manual orders. Absolutely, this is an option. But what we understand from feedback from our customers is this typically creates more issues. For example, orders being placed for suppliers you are unaware of. Placing orders for items that are out of stock. Invoices go missing in the post. People's emails aren't monitored when they're either on holiday or on sick. It's an option, but with many disadvantages. Web shops. Utilizing your supplier's web shop interface is a great way to obtain many end user benefits and company processes. Net prices and stock availability are easily visible and shown in real time. Order status can be easily accessed and monitored. Ability to consolidate your supplier tail as you have visibility through the web shop with items you didn't know your supplier could provide. Punch out. Punch out provides all the same benefits as web shop. However, this is embedded into your company's ERP. This allows seamless integration with your supplier's punch out interface to allow your end users to remove the need for any duplication of orders. EDI. Looking to integrate and automate a range of transaction types such as orders, order acknowledgements, ASNs, and invoices between your ERP and your supplier's ERP. We all like a number, something we can reference, something we can comprehend or understand. 81%. 81% of companies are still using a form of manual-based processes. 81%. Just try to relate that to our own personal lives and how we order things at home. I mean, who sent an email order to Amazon before? £14, £8.50. If you switch from manual processing to a new business solution, you can save £14 per order and £8.50 per invoice. But where do these numbers come from? GS1 are a non-for-profit organisation based here in the UK who created a white paper detailing the return on investments customers would benefit from when implementing a new business solution. It's important to note that EDI transactions drive efficiency and cost savings, largely through a reduction in disputes caused by inconsistent data. It's fundamental to understand and recognise that data is the key in all these key elements. If the data is incorrect, then the whole automated process becomes challenging and rather manual. Further benefits such as reduced administration and faster moving inventory increase the need for less compliance checks. Similarly, electronic invoicing increases reconciliation speed by reducing data entry time and dispute resolution requirements. Even today, we have some customers still sending us fax orders. So the key main benefits to implementing business: reduces cost, reduces the cost of processing transactions by removing human touch points, improves efficiency by automating processes and negating the need for human touch points. Instead, you have direct system-to-system integration. Increases accuracy by ensuring we're using up-to-date and accurate data provides the most accurate P2P validation rules. Speeds delivery. E-business orders take seconds to be processed. When you factor this element into ordering time cutoffs, this is the difference between next day deliveries or not. And lastly, another factor that is very much aligned with our company mission goal of making the world a healthier, cleaner and safer place is to reduce our CO2 footprint. Anywhere where we can remove a paper-based trail helps us reduce our CO2 footprint, and e-business certainly helps us achieve that. The P2P process is often perceived as a complex beast. However, it's far simpler than that. P2P can be broken down into 3 key elements. Shop. Finding your products in the most efficient manner. Not only finding them, but ensuring that the items have good quality images and enriched data behind that product. Order. Ensuring your orders are sent in the most efficient way and removing the need for manual touchpoints. Invoice. Ensuring your invoices are received in the most efficient way, and again, looking to remove the need for manual touchpoints. Our aim here is to work on the 2 to 3% of exceptions, opposed to 100% of all transactions based on a manual process. Having worked within the e-business sector for nearly 20 years, I understand it's hard to visualize how an e-business solution operates, as a number of the processes happen in the background, unbeknown to you or your end users. However, I've tried to display and visualize how each solution processes documents and the key steps taken. We start with the manual process. So we've already touched on something that should be used as a last resort. That need and dependency to have individuals manually processing documents is tough, especially when resource can be so difficult to obtain. Webshop, using your supplier's web interface to be able to process your orders and enhance your end user's experience, with finally then moving into a level of integration and use of punch-out and finally direct EDI and full integration. Humans are good, but sometimes we have off days. When manually processing documents, it's easy for humans to get thinking. Is it an 8? Is it a 9? Those things can happen when we have human touch points involved during the P2P process. Our website is specifically designed to enable our customers to self-serve their needs. We understand time is precious, and thus customers don't want to be chasing account managers, customer service team or quality team for updates. Users want to be able to self-serve their own needs when they have the time. You can see additional benefits of your end users gain utilizing Thermo Fisher Workshop on the screen. Whilst both Fisher Scientific and Thermo Fisher share much of the same web functionality, each website does itself provide more niche functions, such as Fisher Science's ability to support e-card transactions, whereas Thermo Fisher provides guided search tools. As we have already discovered so far, the webshop can be used to provide instant access to your net prices and stock availability. Order status of orders is available at the click of a button and also provides the functionality to process quotes online. Thermo Fisher's webshop offerings lead in the way in providing our customers with the most intuitive end user experience available. As your business and volumes grow, it's important to look into the world of EDI integration through both punch-out and direct EDI solutions. These both work on the basis of data integration between customer and supplier, allowing for data to be sent electronically between the two parties and thus ensuring a fully automated e-business solution. We talked earlier about solution scalability, and it's important to note that our solutions can evolve just as fluidly as yours. In summary, starting your e-business journey can be daunting, but it's important to note that Thermo Fisher have the solution to meet your requirements. It's important to understand that all our e-business solutions are designed with our customers' needs and requirements at the center of the solution. All our solutions are bespoke to our customers and are not off-the-shelf products, limited by what they can do and not what our customers require them to do. For us, we understand that each customer operates and works in different ways. So a key element is that all our solutions are flexible and agile to our customers' requirements. And lastly, further good news, all our e-business solutions are part of Thermo Fisher's value-added proposition, which means your access to our e-business solutions, our integration team, our development team, our support team, and lastly me, are all inclusive as part of our value proposition. Another element and range of solutions we can provide are inventory management based. Again, this will be dependent on your own needs and requirements as your company grows and scales. When you first move into a new building, you'll be considering the space you have to play with, and thinking about managing the flow of general life supplies will soon become one of the many things to contemplate. Initially, you may like to do everything yourself. That means setting up an inventory spreadsheet or another tool to help you keep track of what's coming in and what's going out. There are a couple of key things to bear in mind if you're planning on managing this manually. One of the biggest pitfalls is that if you let nature take its course, often the burden of inventory management falls onto one person who might be the most proactive about checking the stocks and orders. To avoid this situation, consider having a shared system for the entire team to collaboratively communicate the current state of inventory. It could be a large whiteboard in a shared area or a shared spreadsheet. Another trick is to consider having a designated area where the lab stocks are located instead of spread across different people's branches. This way, one can quickly visualize what's running low and take immediate action. Another major consideration is how to plan for inventory. There will be some inherent factors like the size of your lab, where you can hold stock, and how much stock you need at any given time, but there are some other factors too. For example, what is your turnaround time of key reagents? What is the supplier's turnaround time for key reagent? That will determine how much you order and in what frequency. There are also external influences like supply chain disruption during a pandemic or expenses deadlines by a grant agency that will dynamically change how you do your resource planning. Should you move away from manual inventory management, Thermo Fisher has a few options available that will work with your company at various stages in your journey. First and foremost, it will be important to have some online accounts for your preferred vendors. Some like Thermo Fisher will give you online stock availability information. Other vendors, you may have to call a customer care team to find out this information. So always try not to leave any purchases until the last minute, as stock levels can vary drastically with demand. When we look into next year, ULS will have an exciting tool available that will take care of your inventory management from an app or local device. This will free time from keeping on top of outgoing and incoming stock. Should the consumable needs for your company become almost a full-time job for someone, or you find you're getting regular deliveries from one supplier in particular, you may like to consider an on-site supply center. On the slide, we can see pictures of different vending machine units from Thermo Fisher Scientific. Some you may have seen in action or a chance to use as they're deployed throughout the country. The last option would be for the flow of goods into your company becomes a full-time job and needs to be managed by an experienced individual. ULS have a solution to place an individual or individuals on site to run your stores and take care of the daily operations on your behalf. This is what we refer to generally as vendor managed inventory. I know sustainability is all in our minds lately. This is one of the areas of great interest in Thermo Fisher as well. The greenest way to buy from Thermo Fisher is to order through our on-site supply centers. I know most of you will perhaps start your inventory management journey from using our ULS software and application, but I would like you to have on-site supply center inside as you grow to up-level your efficiency in the future. So what are some of the benefits of using the on-site supply centers? COVID-19 really highlighted the importance of efficient supply chain management. The supply center can lessen back orders impacting project deadlines or managing complex project needs with uncertain supply. It's also a great tool to mitigate organizational constraints, such as minimizing your time to keep track of project budget and allocation or overcome limited staff to support your research group. Supply center can also save you money and time. Specifically, it can reduce cost of shipping and handling or wasted product due to redundancy in orders. What about being able to save all the time in the ordering process for small orders or waiting periods of deliveries due to ordering delays? Lastly, supply centers have great environmental benefits, as I discussed earlier. Consolidated shipments reduce packaging waste by 317,500 kilos a year. This amounts to a reduced carbon footprint of over 340 metric tons of CO2 annually, the equivalent of taking 73 cars off the road. Supply centres also make it easy to find all Thermo Fisher's greener product alternatives, which are labelled for the green room. I'd like to thank you all for your time and open up to any questions that you may have. And hopefully we'll see some questions coming through. As you say, the chat was early in the second half. I'm sure we've all warmed up now.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. There was really good overview of all the pros and reasons why we should go for electronic systems. But I guess a question is, if there are so few companies going for that, is it because it's probably because of change, and so it's difficult to make? And sometimes a driver for change is the not the threat, but it's just, you know, the what they should be worried or concerned about if they don't have an ERP. I mean, what are the risks associated with that, which could be an argument for them to be convinced. So the question is what they should be worried or concerned if they don't have an ERP.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, I appreciate e-business is a very niche sector and a very niche topic. I'm sure, as we saw by the poll, 50% have an understanding of web shop and punch out, and 50% have no idea with regards to the terminology. However, what I would say is, if to try and use a metaphor and analogy that we can all understand, is that if you try to build a house, you would certainly build the foundations first opposed to the roof first, because without good foundations, obviously your roof would just collapse. And it's the same with e-business and procurement and ERPs. So certainly, as I say, you will get to that tipping point with regards to scalability. And it's at that point there when you have to look and question about your internal processes. And again, it goes back, just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's the most efficient way. And certainly through Thermo Fisher, we have specialists such as myself who will certainly be more than willing to help and advise any questions or suggestions that our customers may have. So certainly, if you feel as if the pressure of processing orders and invoices is becoming too much, you can certainly reach out to your suppliers, or indeed myself, and certainly be here to help and advise on how we can best work with you.
Thanks. So again, it's really future-proofing the business operation, which I think is a very, very important point. I have a slightly more technical, precise question. So if company finding themselves ordering the same item on a regular basis, is there a more efficient way to reorder, find this product, to make it order?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's certainly a bugbear that we hear from customers of ours, certainly using other supplier web shops. Okay, because as you say, we typically find ourselves ordering the same 10, 20, 30 consumables on a fairly regular basis. So what we did through Thermo Fisher is that we designed our website to create what's known as a My List. Okay? And certainly a My List is the ability for a user to set up a shortlist of their favorite items. So instead of having to search for the same items over and over again, adding into your basket, through Thermo Fisher, you can set up a My List. You can jump straight to that My List. That will then return all your search results of your favorite items. Not only that, it will provide you that real-time stock availability. So again, what we're trying to do there is we're trying to make that end-to-end process much more user-intuitive, okay, for our customers. So instead of having to search for that item, you can go straight to your My List, you can check the stock availability, you can add it to your basket, and you can check it.
So having a My Favorites function in the e-shop, which
absolutely,
again is simplifying their life. No, that sounds really good. So if nothing else coming up from the audience, I have a last question that I'm hearing sometimes from companies actually. So for those who are getting into the e-business solutions, and there are some, question is relating to this scaling up element, is how do we know when we're ready to increase our e-business solution into something that's more integrated and automated? So to go to the next level, what would be the trigger for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's probably looking at the stress levels of the procurement team at the minute, how much hair they're currently pulling out. But similarly, all joking aside, we go back to the analogy of putting those foundations in first and foremost. So certainly, I think if you are already thinking about, is it too late? The answer is it probably is. So certainly trying to have those conversations and discussions. And if nothing else, hopefully this quick presentation is giving you some ideas as to what's out there. Because again, a number of customers that I've dealt with personally, they only know what they know. And again, they've always done things in a certain way. They've always placed orders manually. But certainly when they look to move into an integrated solution, they realize how much time was wasted by manually processing documents. And certainly if you have other customers out there, I would feel free to ask them, actually, what solutions do you have with regards to procurement? Because certainly any customer that moves from a manual-based process over to an automated process will certainly see immediate benefits by doing so. So to paraphrase, certainly if you are looking at it and you're looking to scale your business, now is certainly the time to have those conversations.
Thank you, Paul. And yes, really good advice. So when is the right time is assessing stress level of staff rather than waiting until it's too late. So definitely keep that one as an answer. I think that's it on our end.
I was hopeful I might get one question in the chat.
People are just shy, so they're asking.
Absolutely. Let's hope so. So with that, I guess I will hand over to Ian Yates, our Director of Enterprise Science and Innovation Partnerships.
Thanks, Paul. Great to follow a talk about digital commerce with a talk about digital labs. So my name's Ian Yates. I'm a Brit living here in Toronto, Canada. So a fun weekend for me watching the US Open. I was pointing out to all my British relatives that Emma Raducanu was actually born in Toronto. So I was calling it the All-Canadian final at the US Open, but amazing to see two strong teenage women in the final of a tennis match. That was so exciting. Thanks too for hanging in here to the end. It's a long session, and so I appreciate everyone's attention. As Paul said, I'm a Director of Enterprise Science and Innovation Partnerships here at Thermo Fisher Scientific. I report into our Chief Science Office, and we really work with customers to work on kind of long-term collaborations and kind of look where your needs are going in the next 3 to 5 years. And so what are the features in terms of science as well as technology that are really going to drive the future of the industry? And my particular focus is something we call lab transformation. I've been in industry for 25 years, lived in the UK, obviously born in the UK, lived in Sweden, in California, and now here in Toronto. So before we really get into the talk, I think it's great to start with a bit of a definition. So what is a digitally native lab? What do we mean by a digitally native lab? And this is a lab that contains digitized systems. So it's a paperless lab as much as possible. It contains instruments that are connected, so Internet of Things. It contains informatics solutions, robotics, automation, immersive technologies, and data science. So that's what it is, but just as important is why. Why do we want digitally native labs? Really, it's all about delivering increased quality of results, reducing the time to those results, whilst increasing productivity and reducing costs. You heard Paul talk about one of the big motivations for digital commerce is it reduces cost, and the same is true in kind of lab of the future initiatives. So interestingly, I spend most of my days working with our larger customers, so some of the leading biopharma customers around the world. And their challenge is really legacy systems. So you can see some data here from a recent study done at the end of last year around digital transformation. And you can see a lot of the challenges that larger companies are facing is really all about their existing systems, decisions they've taken in the past, current infrastructure that's preventing them from taking advantage of some of these digital technologies and some of these transformative ways of working. Alongside those technology challenges, there's also the people challenges, which is how do they reskill or acquire or attract and retain the people that are happy working in a digital environment and really are digitally native. A few headlines here, obviously just reflecting the fact that the pandemic has also accelerated this transformation, both in labs as well as across businesses as a whole. So this is how we view digital transformation or lab transformation, and you'll often hear it called the Lab 4.0 journey to line up with Pharma 4.0. And the first part of the journey really is the connected lab. So how to connect the people, the equipment, the consumables, the systems, and the data. So you really have kind of a clear starting point and high quality data. The second step is then, once you've got that data in place and that infrastructure in place, to start thinking about automation. So once your capabilities are connected, then and somewhat stable, automation can be used to accelerate science and drive productivity. And that leads us to the third and final step, advanced analytics. So once you've connected your data and optimized your workflows, it allows you to look at the data in new and exciting ways, apply it to critical business challenges, and really most importantly, and get the insights and understanding that you need in ways that weren't possible before. Cool. So before I start diving into the connected lab, I have a poll to make sure people are still awake. Jenny, can you fire off the poll? So the question is, how familiar are you with FAIR data principles? This is great. I'm hopefully sharing the results here. It tells me that I'm talking to the right kind of audience. So there's not a lot of familiarity with FAIR data principles on the call. And that's great because that's what we're gonna talk about next. So underlying digital transformation is the concept of FAIR data, which is key in today's laboratory environment. So FAIR data, so FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So it's really about treating data as a very valuable resource. And that can be everything from the data that again, Paul touched on in terms of digitally, what are we buying, how are we buying it, where's it stored? But there's also scientific data. And it's really, if we get our data to apply to these FAIR principles, it becomes a lot more valuable to us. There's a famous AI scientist here in the US called Andrew Ng, and he talks about good data beats good models. And that is, without good data, then any AI and any machine learning you do is really not going to deliver the value that you expect. So it's really important that companies think about making sure their data is fair as much as possible from the beginning. And again, many companies, you're not alone here, many companies are finding as they start to move towards lab transformation, they're finding that their data is not fair. And you can see here in the recent survey Accenture did, that was up to about 88% of people overall. It's also good to remember that there's different types of data. So scientists, often the first data they think of is the experimental data. So this is your raw instrument data, metadata related to those experiments, as well as data that's been processed. This is the data that enables those advanced analytics, and the collaboration is really driving the science and the discovery forward. But then there's also operational data. This is data about the instrumentation you're using, the workflows, the processes. And this is really what drives some of those business insights in terms of how are my equipments being used, when are they being used? If I walk up to an instrument, do I know it's been calibrated and available to use? Is it booked by somebody else in the lab? So really, when we think about data, it's important to think about these two different types of data and how they're both really important as we're thinking about digitalizing our lab. So how can this data drive productivity? So if we start on the left here, instruments and equipment. So having data about our instruments, having them IoT ready, having remote monitoring really drives our productivity and gives access to information about the status of those instruments and access to that data across the company. It also ties into that centralized asset management. Is the equipment fleet I have, is it being used efficiently? Perhaps I have some instruments that are used 100% of the time, and I could look at acquiring more. Maybe there's some instruments in other labs that are not being used as much, and we could allocate those instrument resources somewhere else. Consumables, another nice picture here of the supply centers. So again, simplify ordering and managing costs, making sure that the people have access to the consumables they need when they need them in real time. Here at the central slide, most important is the people. And there's several aspects to this, and often the people get forgotten in lab transformation, but they really are the key to success. It's both enabling collaboration, but also making sure that the working environment is rewarding and stimulating to those people. So we want the scientists to be focusing on the science, not spending time tracking down data, having to transform data from an Excel and put it into a database, not having to track down consumables, not having to see if an instrument has been calibrated and available for use. Scientific workflows comes next. So knowing what tasks are available, what tasks come next in a workflow. So orchestrating workflow to connect processes definitely drives efficiency and productivity. And then lastly, again, as we've touched on before, the data is the most important. So having this connectivity means you get all the data you need, good quality data. And if we apply those fair data principles and data standards, it really is going to drive the quality of the insights that we can draw from that data. And of course, it's important not to build data silos. So the value of the data is not just in one lab or one facility, but it's having that data be accessible as we go through that molecule to medicine process. So we need to share data within research, but then how do we pass that data on through process development into the clinical phase, speeding up the clinical phase and making data available, as well as potentially passing data back to the research phase so the organization can learn and optimize its processes as it goes through this cycle multiple times. Again, there's another tech transfer here from the clinical phase to the manufacturing phase, making sure the data is available to go through the process. And there's Chet talked about as well. There's also the data transfer to potential outsourced partners. So again, having those data standards and that fair data just introduces efficiency throughout the whole workflow. And the key takeaway here is really that having that secure and repeatable data transfer is what enables you to accelerate your time to market. So just touching briefly on what some of the capabilities we have here in Thermo Fisher Scientific. So we have capabilities in the electronic notebook space. We have capabilities in the LIMS space, so connecting the R&D ecosystem with Platform for Science. And we also have Watson LIMS used in the majority of the top 20 biopharma laboratories. And then we have Sample Manager, which is used very heavily in the manufacturing space. And then we also have scientific data management solutions. So where you assign your data with the process results, and again, using open standards here with access to many, many different formats. So you're not locked into one data type and can cope with that vast array of different types of data that's available and you'll need in your organization. And then a quick recent use case of how bringing in this connected laboratory can help is we're lucky at Thermo Fisher in that we have one of the leading CDMO organizations, the Patheon brand, with over 55 sites globally around the world, and has been part of delivering 50 of the top 100 selling medicines over the past decade. And we did a project with them to really look at bringing digitalization to their QA/QC. This was using our Sample Manager product together with connected instruments. And you can see here from this quote, this was really moving a lab that you still used a fair amount of paper and a fair amount of those manual processes, and really moving them into the paperless era. And that's driving significant advantages in both efficiency, productivity, as well as compliance. So the second step on the Lab 4.0 journey is robotics and automation. So once you've got your basic data infrastructure in place, and you can then move on to look at automating some of those workflows and some of those processes. And these are some of the challenges that automation can solve in a laboratory environment. So the first one, and the one that's most commonly identified with automation, is maximizing throughput. So how do we increase the use of those equipment, and how do we get the most samples processed in the shortest amount of time possible? But an advantage that people often don't think about is the ability to enhance reproducible results. So automation, I think it was Paul mentioned earlier that people can have bad days, and you get increased reproducibility, increased consistency by using automation, which is really important for maintaining sample processing uniformity. So every sample is treated the same, so increased data quality there. Reducing errors. People can get distracted, pick up their phones, so automation generally doesn't make a mistake, and if it does, it has a record of that mistake. Automation also enables us to scale. Automation solutions today are much more modular in nature and can easily be expanded, both as the current workflow increases in capacity, as well as versatility in terms of adding new workflows. And lastly, automation decreases the hands-on time required by FTEs, freeing time up for them to focus on the science and the research. Again, just briefly touching on some of the automation solutions we have here at Thermo Fisher Scientific. We have solutions ranging all the way here from the left to kind of small benchtop, what we would call instrument loading solutions, through to benchtop automation, perhaps automating a simple workflow, all the way through to the right-hand side there of kind of very large systems that are automating multiple workflows and truly running kind of in a 24/7 environment. And hopefully this video works. Yes. So here's just a video of one of those from the right-hand side of the slide, like a large-scale automation. This is a system that's definitely at the high end of what we do in terms of complexity, with 7 robotic arms, 66 instruments integrated, and 3 conveyor systems connecting 3 separate systems together. And this is doing an NGS workflow. What's interesting about this system is it's run 6 days a week, 24 hours a day, and then they use the 7th day for a full reloading of the system, preventive maintenance, before starting it all off again next week, for the next week. So the last step on the journey is really about making the labs intelligent. So we have the basic data infrastructure, we have fair data, we have good quality data. We've automated our stable process with robotics and automation. And through that, we're really generating the data we need to drive intelligence, so insights in our lab. And so by enabling digitalization, we enable advanced data analytics. Here's just an example using our Shiny, but different companies have different analytical tools, and they can use those to apply to the data. So again, it's having that high quality data that enables you to drive the insights. And high quality data enables AI, machine learning, and goal-based science. So there's been obviously a dramatic increase in the use of these technologies in assessing our data. And really nothing is possible without high quality data. And here's a case study kind of really showing that intelligent lab. This is the result of a collaboration we have with Carnegie Mellon University on the East Coast in the US. And we put in place an automation system, which is interesting because it supports their Masters of Science. in automated science. So Carnegie Mellon University actually has a program teaching the researchers of the future how to integrate some of these Lab 4.0 principles and teach them that as a master program. So it uses that connected instrumentation we talked about, the data structure, robotics, and AI to scientific research. And a double benefit of this is this facility enabled the university to continue to offer this program even during the pandemic, because they switched to remote operation of the system. So some of the very principles that our customers have been asking us around is, how do we enable automation to continue business continuity at a time when maybe we can't get people in the lab? And you can see here the goal really is the self-driving instruments to drive that, sometimes called closed loop science. So the robotics generates the data, the machine learning interprets the data, and then artificial intelligence tells you which experiments to run next. And we go through this cycle of learning. So this is what I would call automated science or closed loop science. So in summary, a digitally native lab delivers long-term benefits. So some of the benefits are eliminating the manual lab work, increased throughput, more reproducible, less errors. It enables you to manage your samples throughout their life science by having those LIMS systems, that connected data. Connected lab workflow, so you can move samples from one workflow to the next. Be aware of the consumables needed, so you're never short of consumables. You have a digital lab environment, and then you have that accessible data for analytics, that fair data. And ultimately, this comes down to giving you increased quality of results, reduced time to results, those improved productivity and reduced costs that we were looking for. And it's really foundational for any advanced analytics and AI ambitions. Let's click through those. And of course, as with all the things we've talked about today, Thermo Fisher is here to help. So whether it's through connecting your laboratories, through LIMS and ELN systems, whether it's automating through robotics and advanced instrumentation, or whether it's through some of our innovative data science capabilities. And I think we have maybe a minute or two for any questions.
Thank you, Ian. Really, really, really fascinating. And I'm personally really interested in this automation one. I'll crack on with a quick one, if you don't mind. Obviously, it's it looks appealing and you make the case of why that's important. But what would you say are the most critical factors to consider early when you're building a lab on the future?
I think it's obviously a balance. As a small company or a company that's growing, there's lots of priorities, there's lots of things to focus on. And it can sometimes be hard to put the energy into some of those future-looking things, like building that data foundation. It's people get started with Excel and small databases, and they build together a solution that works for now, because that's what a small company does. It's what do we need now? So I'd say it's really at least starting to map, where are we going? What will this data be used for? Like we saw those fair data principles, and again they're fairly straightforward. It's findable. Can I find the data pool? Is it accessible? Is it interoperable? Can I use it between different groups? And those it's asking yourself those questions, and it means you don't go down the route that causes you problems later. And as I talked about earlier in the talk, some companies find themselves in now transformation is hard because of decisions we made earlier on. So I'd say that's really what to think about at the beginning, is what is my data foundation? Because that data is going to drive so much of a company in the future.
Yeah, and I think this data foundation, as you said, it's not just if you go the automated route, is for any type of organization. That's where they should start. But would you say you would need sort of a lead to go to this lab of the future direction, or do you need to consider training for staff, or is it critical, I would say?
Yeah, great question. I once worked, when I worked in Sweden, I was part of a high throughput screening organization that AstraZeneca created, well, it was Astra at the time. And I remember one of our first hires was a data scientist. And I think that was really important because they built that capability from the ground up with us, the scientists, and with us, the business leaders. Having that data scientist from the beginning, I'd say, was a key part of our success as an organization. Otherwise, we'd have messed it up. As scientists would have been still using Excel, and he was the one that made us follow some of those data foundations from the beginning. And as I talked about, often people are forgotten in this lab transformation. We need to consider how they're going to work in the labs and how they're going to operate. So I think that's a key part to any digital lab, is the people.
Bringing the data scientist to life sciences. It's a good message.
Yeah.
I'll just close up with a quick one, because obviously the automation system that you shown was really impressive. And I like the idea that robots also need a day off in the week. So that's a good thing. But anyway, how long does it take to design and deliver something of that scale, what you showed? Because it's great to see, but maybe to get that back in the context of an organization, well, how long does that take, and maybe costs?
Yeah, so a system like that is definitely, you're looking at perhaps 6 to 9 months from kind of concept to delivery. That company, I remember, did have a very aggressive timeline, so it was closer to the 6 months. But what's nice about automation nowadays is you can start small. And again, it's a bit like the data we have as a company, kind of small benchtop solutions. So it's getting people familiar with using those kind of solutions early on. And then you start to think about, how do I build my assays? How do I build my workflows for automation? Maybe using simple modular benchtops. And then when you're ready for making a move to a more dedicated system, you have that experience again with the people who know how to think in an automated way. And so I definitely wouldn't start with a system of that size. So I think it's great that you build up to it. So, and those benchtop systems, you can get them in a few weeks and be up and running. And obviously the barrier to entry is a lot lower, but the principles are the same. So they set you off on a good path to a 4.0 lab.
Yeah, it's quite gradual implementation.
Yeah.
It sounds good. Okay. That's it on my end. So giving you the floor.
Thanks, everyone. I think it's back to Ashley for the